Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here in Kris Jurik's garden in Ames, Iowa. The lilies are blooming and she's going to give us a tour, so why don't you come along? So this is interesting because there's a lot of shade here, but you're still able to pop the lilies in.
I am.
How does that work?
So I pop the lilies in because in the morning I get morning sun, and then in the afternoon I get sun.
Okay,
But
so they just kind of like follow the sun around a little bit.
the sun.
Yep, all these little
And so I
spots.
like little pops. And what I like in the evening is when it's darker, this white pops.
Oh, I
The
bet.
white really pops in the evening. But I like low because so when then you come up, you can look down. So these are small. These are up.
The Asiatics tend to be more, okay.
Well, no, they can be up, they can be out, they can be down. But
Okay.
these are up. And
But you're
so
choosing
I like
those.
it when they're short and they're up because you can look down and see
That's
the...
perfect, right by the path like
like
that.
that.
And these light orange and
And I
yellows.
love this
Ooh,
one,
that's pretty too. So you were just talking about how the lilies we were looking at over there were upward facing, but that Asiatics can be lots of different things. I see this one looks like it's different than those.
So this is a down facing, and so if you were to enter this into a show, you would put it in the category of down facing.
Okay.
And you would look for one that is even on all sides.
Even meaning
Even so
distributed around
distributed all the way around,
stalk.
and that
Okay.
the stalk doesn't have any bent structure.
Okay.
But now this orangey pink one again is another up.
That
And
is
see-
so
and see
beautiful.
that? Now we're looking at a moth, and this moth, the butterflies and the moths absolutely love lilies. And
Well,
so
you
do
have
the
lots of that.
Okay, so do the hummingbirds.
Oh, really? I wouldn't have, I guess I don't know if I knew that.
The hummingbirds.
Do they like some flower shapes better than others with the lilies? Like make the more trumpet shaped ones?
Yeah,
Do
they
s-
like the more down faced because they
Okay,
all put their noses right up there.
right? So the more open faced ones don't
And
have
the
quite as many.
hummingbirds come more in the evening, like when my husband and I are sitting and
Yeah.
we're having a cold beverage in the evening
Yep.
after we're done working in the yard. Then we notice the hummingbirds. Wow.
That is a great way to end the
See now
day.
here, now look. See now this is yellow, and this is definitely up facing.
Right?
And
So
that
pretty.
this will be again another down facing.
Right. Okay.
And
I
that
see.
now these are more out facing.
Okay.
So
Right. So there's lots of options.
there are lots of options.
How many different varieties of Asiatics do you think you have?
I have no idea. I have
Thousands.
No idea. You know, every year it's something different. It
Right.
just depends on weather conditions.
Right. Oh, it's
Also,
amazing.
lilies like to be divided, so you can grow them for like about 3 years, and then they get to be a little bit overcrowded, so then you want to divide.
So when do you divide? What time of year?
So I divide in late summer,
Okay.
and then for me, I'll bring them into our Lily Society, and then we have a bulb exchange.
Oh, cool.
And so that's really exciting because you get something new and you give something away.
Do you
I
ever
love it.
completely get rid of a variety, or do you just divide it and keep it going and try
No,
new
I
things?
keep them going.
You keep
the
them all.
best I can do.
Yeah. So I
But
noticed
see,
this
now,
bed.
look at,
Oh yeah.
Now, some of them have got a little bit more pollen. Now my granddaughter was here the other day and she stuck her nose
Oh.
into the lily, and then she got
On her face.
so the pollen will leave a little orange.
Yep. So when you're doing cut flowers, do you usually cut those off, or
No,
not
you
worry
leave
about
them, but if you put it into a show flower, see, for instance, if you look at this, you can see the pollen on the,
Oh, right.
the leaf,
Uh-huh.
where you would want to brush it off if you put it into
Before
a
you showed
show,
it. Okay.
Because you don't want pollen on the leaf for show.
That's like considered
And then
a
my
no-no?
granddaughter gets in trouble because she gets it all over. She likes to come around and sniff every single lily. Trust me. She does.
I bet.
And she never goes home without a lily or a flower of some sort in her hand, ever.
Well, she's got lots to choose from. So I noticed that these gardens have a lot of irises and also lilies, among other things. And it just seems like irises and lilies are a great natural companion.
Well, this particular bed has got MTBs in it. So they're miniature tall bearded irises. And
Okay.
those are really petite irises. This is really a wonderful iris bed. But after they're all done, then the lilies come up to keep interest in my garden.
Yeah, that's
and so, I like a lot of different color. The butterflies and the moths seem to love it, the hummingbirds, etc. And I like this particular garden because I can look down at a river and see it. And the neighbors, as they walk by, they can see plenty of color.
This is right up at the edge of the yard, so they can see it. Right.
Yard.
Right. And you mentioned that you often send them home with cut flowers.
And I do. If I happen to have scissors in my hand and they're here, then I will send them home with a bouquet of flowers.
What a nice neighbor.
And the other thing is that I have a lot of elderly friends, and this garden is right on top, so they can come and this is an easy, accessible garden.
That's
so
really kind, yeah.
Around.
So really accessible up here at the top of the hill. Well, it'll be fun to take a look at the bottom of the hill because there's lots more down there, I know, too. Oh, this one is so beautiful. I love that orange and pink blend. So you were talking about dividing, Kris, and is this a clump that would kind of reach that 3-year time frame?
So I would divide this. Normally when I start with my lilies, I like to have 3 bulbs. I start with 3 bulbs.
Okay.
And then I plant them. But sometimes it's only 1 bulb. So this whole clump here is just from 3 bulbs.
Wow.
And this is reaching a point where it will be divided this fall.
And how many bulbs do you think you'll get out of it when you divide it?
Many.
Will you leave 3 in the spot?
And then I will dig this whole clump up, and then I will put 3 back in again.
Okay.
And start
And
it all
everything
over.
else out. So you'll have a lot to come out of that
But I
this
like
fall.
to go in 3s, 5s, never 7 because then you're going to be crowded right away. But typically I use 3.
Makes sense.
But not every bulb is affordable either. Where 1.
Sometimes 1 is all, yeah, that makes sense. This bed really showcases all the different varieties of hosta that you have, and there's such great variation in colors and textures and shapes.
Well, this bed is about 3 years old, and it starts really, really early in the spring. I have little flowers that appear before any of these hostas appear, and then I have some hellebores mixed in, and they start blooming January, February, March. I have some peonies in here that are woodland peonies, and they start flowering. Then I also have trillium. Some of the ephemerals are up here. But this bed is ever changing.
Oh, yeah.
And then the hostas are here. And then after the hostas, of course, you've got that Virginia creeper that goes up the trees and it starts to turn red. And the foliage on the trees starts to turn yellows and reds.
So it's just year round almost.
It's year round. And this is just one of my real favorite beds. I have little irises in here.
Oh,
that
sweet.
flower very early.
Oh, so beautiful.
But again, this bed is 3 years old now. I put in some martagon lilies, all different colors of hostas.
Great.
And,
I can't believe it's only 3 years old.
this is 3 years old.
That's grown so big.
I also love the martagon lilies. And they're pretty like the shade.
Those are so pretty. They're just so dainty, you know, you don't
Very
think,
dainty.
you know, compared to some of the really big lilies.
You know, I don't start out with a whole clump of martagon lilies.
Martagons are expensive,
They're
right?
expensive. So, you know, I start out with usually one.
Yeah.
One.
And are they
of a
slower
variety.
growing? Are they slower growing than some, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily, but they're expensive.
Oh, they're so beautiful.
So this clump here started from 1.
One bulb. Well, it's pretty impressive. I'm so impressed with all your pathways and your terracing here, and I'm also impressed that it sounds like you've done most of this yourselves.
Right, it's a teamwork with my husband and I. So my husband does all the hardscaping, and he's built all the walls that you've seen. We've held in the rocks, we've done the malls, we've brought in the stone. My husband has taken apart a stone wall from a friend who was building a different wall, so we used the pieces of the old stone wall. It's really hard to tame. We're going down a hillside now, and so we're trying to tame the hillside. The hostas and the hellebores and everything will get bigger over time, but it's really hard. but it's really fun to walk through the paths that we've created.
It is, and it makes for a great view down down the hill of the river.
It's a great view. and I have a friend that comes over pretty much every day, and she likes to sit on all the benches. So she comes over, and we go from bench to bench and, and look at the views.
That sounds like a really pleasant way to spend the day.
It is.
So here we are in the Hosta collection in the shade garden, and it's not hot today, but if it were hot, this is the spot I would want to be in.
Exactly. So in the springtime, and when it's snow's melting and it's still cool, I like to work out into the sunshine. When it's really hot and it's in those muggy or 90-degree weather or whatever, then I move into the Hosta garden.
And what a beautiful place to be working. This is so gorgeous. This hillside is just amazing. I'm also noticing that the deer fencing here is stretched across around this part of the garden, and I know hostas are notoriously...
Well, one day Tom and I woke up and all the hostas were eaten. Can you imagine?
No.
They were all eaten.
Ugh.
So Tom, we added the first deer fence.
Okay.
So this was the end of the garden as far as needing fencing.
Protection.
It was before
Okay.
I got into the lilies and adding daylilies.
Okay.
So hostas were that was my first love.
Okay.
So we added this to protect the hostas.
Okay. And the fence, Tom told me a little bit ago that the first fence was 6.5 feet
6.5
tall,
feet.
but as you're adding fencing...
As we're adding fencing down to our lower level into our sunny areas, we're now at 8 feet because the deer down there can take a running leap, versus here we're on a hillside and it's a little more difficult.
So the slope makes it harder for them to
Slope
jump
makes
over.
it
So
harder to
the 6
jump over.
feet is okay.
But at this point, if a deer came and ate,
Oh, devastation.
it would,
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at the rest. So we've been getting just a glimpse of this lower garden from the top of the hill. I can't wait to see what's down here.
well, after the hosta were all eaten, then I got into peonies.
Okay.
And it was before I got into tree peonies, actually. I just got into herbaceous peonies. So I started planting tons and tons of peonies. And I started with just a middle row here.
I think it's
like
grown.
A middle 6 row. And then I started going a little bit to the east. And all of a sudden I started going a little bit to the west. And then I started going a little bit further down.
It's more than just a row now.
But then I got into lilies and I got into tree peonies. And deer love lilies and they also eat tree peonies.
So then you had to add more fencing.
So then we're just started to add more fencing.
I see. All right.
So
Well, let's take a look at the rest of the garden. I'm noticing there's a lot of clematis in these beds. You said that you've been adding some lately?
So I thought I would bring some more height to the garden and some more color. So just within the last couple years now, I've been adding a variety of clematis. And again, they start in very little small, and it takes a while to get them up there.
Takes a few years.
But
I love the structure that they add to these, these herbaceous perennial borders. Having these kind of structures.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really makes a big difference.
So now when I go shopping, I'm trying to come home with a new structure.
A new obelisk every time.
Right, every time something new to add.
That's
for
good.
Another clematis to climb up.
Do you leave the structures in year
And
round?
then I leave them in year round.
You do? Okay, so that adds something else in the wintertime too.
And that
That's
also
nice.
marks where my clematis are.
So you don't forget.
Otherwise I'll weed it out.
That makes sense. I know these beds started as mostly peonies, but now there are so many different things being added into the beds, and I love these grasses. What a great idea.
So I added grasses because my husband and I like to sit up on our deck and we look down all the time, or from our dining room or from our house. And so after all the color of the peonies and the irises and everything are done, then the grasses have their own color and they add some height. And then the birds love the grasses.
Oh yeah.
And, so even when the fall comes, it's just nice to have something that is, well, they bloom too, you know.
Oh, right,
then the
yeah, so
bloom comes.
late summer, and then
Late
they would
summer.
last all winter, and it gives you
And
something to look at all
I
year.
love that height. I love the
Oh, yeah.
birds.
It's a shape that you can't really replicate with
It is
any
a
other
shape.
plants, too. So I was interested to hear you say that when you bought this property, there was nothing here but trees and hillside, and it's all a natural area, not even a house.
Nope.
But the first thing you did was not build the house.
Well, the first thing we did before the house, there's a deer right there.
Oh,
First thing we did was plant fruit trees and then do a vegetable garden. So
right.
Tom, my husband, did his PhD on wild strawberries, so we had to get the strawberries going right away. We're just replacing our original fruit trees with new fruit trees because they aged out. And our garden changes every year as to what we put in. Always tomatoes and green peppers and lettuces and spinach and kale and all that stuff. But we try something new every year in the vegetable garden.
Wow, that's good.
Like,
and also well protected from the deer.
well protected from the deer. We have a couple mulberry trees down below here, and the deer love to gravitate underneath the mulberry trees.
Yep. Kris, thanks so much for giving me this tour today. I am so inspired by your enthusiasm and by your beautiful garden.
Well, thanks for coming by. It keeps us busy. It keeps Tom and I out of trouble during this times when we're all pretty much stay at home. It's
Right.
been a wonderful way to.
Lucky to have a garden.
We're lucky to have a garden. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sherry with Garden Gate Magazine. If you enjoyed that video, subscribe to our Garden Gate Magazine YouTube channel. You'll find tips, design ideas, how-to help for gardeners just like you. Be sure to hit the bell so you'll be notified every time we upload a video.